Hello and welcome back to another Campaign 4 reaction video. We're here to talk about episode 3. So, right out of the gate, I want to clarify I messed up with my predictions on the last episode. So, the soldier table has been fully revealed, and we're going to get Tayor, Wick, Tyranny, Cadigan, and Thimble for the soldier table. Now, previously I had kind of guessed that Thimble would be in the soldier table, and I had kind of guessed that Cadigan would be on the soldier table just based on vibes, but I had no clue where like the Wick Tyranny combo would go. Now, them going together made sense, but soldier is not what I would have guessed. As it shook out, it seems that kind of the Taor Wick Tyranny triple team have been assigned to the soldier table, and I do like that because that means they're going to be more willing to face confrontation head on, at least combat wise. That seemed to be the implication for the soldier table on the outset. So I previously thought maybe they were the kind of the schemer plot line, but I was totally wrong about that. And kind of, I want at the end of this video, I want to clarify like what I think the remaining tables will be. Who knows? But kind of the start of the episode after we had like this Taor Julian confrontation slightly. I mean, they kind of just perception checked each other and sized each other up. Then we had this crazy like resolution to this trapped celestial that was kind of set up in the last episode. Now, there's a lot of ways on how it could shake out. I thought that Wick would need to kind of make a choice in how the character is gonna move forward in terms of is he's kind of been in the like the wool's been over his eyes. He hasn't been seeing the whole truth, and he kind of acts like a pompous noble, partially because of that. I guess he didn't think he was chosen, but a leader of this religion, and so now he learns the truth, and you could see that he's still like his personality hasn't fundamentally changed, but he has to like rethink about what his belief is. I guess it seems by the end of this episode, he still has been hanging on to this belief in inherent goodness and the light and that kind of his teaching that he was preaching in episode 1. But he now has to kind of take a more careful he has to go against his family. So he hasn't been shook that much to the core. It's just now he still believes it's his same fundamental thing, but he has to go about it in a different way, which is interesting. I thought possibly he would utterly reject his faith and be like, "Wow, everything I knew was a lie, so now I have to rethink my religion." But he seemed to be kind of riding the middle road. Perhaps it could be a consequence of this big kind of character revelation happening pretty early in the story, and that I'm not sure if Sam was ready to kind of toughen up his character. I think he kind of wants to play the scamp a little bit for a couple episodes before maybe getting to any fundamental character change. On the flip side, we have Tyranny, who I really like how she shook out after the first episode, where the first episode she was not following the rules, and now she is kind of the straight man to Wick. She is like the voice of reason. Yeah, the world is cruel. Everything's not black and white. You gotta navigate yourself through these situations, and I love how Tyranny had to take point in kind of getting Wick in the shape. It's a really fun dynamic just seeing both of that Whitney Moore and Sam Riegel like role play back and forth. So we had that great resolution to this opening scene at the onset of this episode. Then we had the next interesting thing was the bar fight, the first combat of campaign 4. Now, I'm gonna go easy on it because it is an intro fight. People were kind of learning their abilities, but it was really funny seeing these characters all roll poorly at this first combat. Really, it's part of the entertaining thing about D&D is that it can go either way. Even though these characters have crazy good stats, like Thimble stats insane. I think everyone's base stat total is like way higher than average, and like they're getting like crazy modifiers. They're like level 3. They're getting like plus plus 6 to like everything, that kind of thing. It feels like the modifiers are pretty crazy for most of the rolls players have been making. But either way, even if you're getting a plus 3 as opposed to a plus 2 on a roll, if you roll a if you roll a 8 or you roll a 5, you're still going to fail the check. So you saw that a lot this first combat, and you definitely felt like, I wouldn't say Brendan intentionally pulled punches, but he didn't intend for this to be a lethal encounter. I mean, he had these rogues like go up and do grapple checks and kind of try and open up an avenues for if they lost the combat, then they would just be knocked unconscious or something. It ended up, eventually Valus kind of joined the combat and the tides returned, and they kind of had this showdown. Also, Ashley Johnson kind of learning how to do a paladin. I'm not super familiar with the new 5th edition rule set. I know there was like a divine smite, and it's a bonus action. I don't know if it was a bonus action before. I thought my memory was how it worked before the new edition was that you can just do it after you like hit or you roll to attack. But I could be wrong. I forget. And then it was changed to bonus action. So there was like some initial confusion where like they tried to use a bonus action, do the damage of a divine smite on a different target, but it's like some of these ranger spells that were around in 5th edition where you do bonus action, the next attack you hit will have this effect. I think that's how it worked. I will double check once I'm done recording this. Yeah, we had some, initial rules, kerfuffles, but otherwise it was a pretty, it was a low stakes combat, but it was cool seeing the characters in action. I will note, keep in mind, fairies are giga busted in D&D. I mean, a fly speed. Sure, obviously in this first combat, Thimble was getting captured, not rolling well, etc. But as soon as she was able to move, she basically was able to completely disengage, like on the second floor of this building, and that is like the danger of flying characters is that they can just like go out of reach of every other combatant very easily. And so, thank God she's a melee character that would there's a lot of abuse you can do if you're a caster and you're flying in the air, etc. But at least if you're a rogue, you kind of have to get in the mix a little bit. So yeah, we saw some rogue action, some fairy fire that was a cool use. We saw mostly some Valus doing some actual damage. Everyone else was kind of doing non-lethal stuff. Uh, we had Cossphere. I'm not a fan of taking Cossphere. I don't know if it's. I'm not sure how the spell list stuff worked in the new edition with necromancers, but maybe you just get it. But I'm a level 1 like casting sleep or casting like cantrips and stuff. Or I think they get. Man, I will refresh myself on the new 5th edition rules so I can understand all these combats. I think also Octus was low on spell slots from casting the Sky Self, so that was another kind of factor. Either way, pretty interesting first combat. Yeah, so we had that, and that kind of endeared Valus to the group. I mean, people were like, "Oh my God, she saved us." So maybe this person isn't a bad guy or whatever. The next kind of notable event is we had this amphitheater description. That scene went on for a long. It was more it went on for a long time. It had more of the kind of Tharja and Hal just being like normal people. They're like, oh, we're hanging out with our kids and we're talking to like this theater troupe, and you didn't feel the adventure aspect until kind of later in the scene where you get kind of these hints that like I always have trouble with their name. Thasia's character is having like this. Oh, there's some force that is drawing you towards the nightingale or whatever, adventurer quality, whatever. A irresistible force that was drawing this character to adventuring. And you kind of felt that in some of the scenes. There was some description of that. So that was interesting. And obviously later, Thasia is pulled in the direction of Valus, and there's this huge description of something of the world is happening, and there's lots of this description. I'm interested to see where this goes. I think this could be the connecting thread of some of these characters. It might have something to do with Boleo, Taliesin's character, just because I believe there was some. I think in B roll or like the cooldown, critical cooldown, there was some mention of, oh, Boleo knows something about the state of the world that others don't, and so maybe that has something to do with Valus and Thasia, who are also like getting these descriptions from Brendan about some pulse or some feeling from the world itself. So that was interesting. Also, we have some really nice like diegetic lore dump. I mean, the ability to have a NPC just like, oh, it's just an older guy who saw the gods when they were still around. So he's gonna have, of course, have a story to tell about the Loy family and the start of the rebellion against the gods. So that was pretty interesting. I liked how it was kind of baked in. It didn't have Brennan have an NPC roll up and go, "Oh, here's this my story." Instead, it was the players actually asking in character and talking to these characters, and then getting the description from them. It felt pretty naturalistic, and I appreciate that. So after we get this kind of like long going scene with this setting up the theater, and Bolea rolls up with this paint, and it's still kind of ambiguous what this paint does, whatever. I'm sure that'll be expanded upon later. Again, there was lots of like, oh, the paint kind of is connected to whatever the world magic thing that's happening. I don't know. Maybe it's all connected to these restless souls that are happening that we get some description of later. I don't know. We'll have to see. So, after this theater troupe, I believe after that is Taor's scene and the Taor and Wick and Tyranny kind of scenes where I love that was a really fun. Again, I think I'm gonna really like this soldier table with Travis, Sam, Whitney, Robbie, Laura, because I really like the character interaction so far with Wick and Tyranny. They've been really fun. Taor seems like they fit in. Taor is kind of like a blank slate character. He doesn't have as much going on, it feels like. I think I like that Travis is willing to keep developing the dynamic between his character and other characters. Like now we have this kind of life debt from Wick and Terror from after like saving him from his demise. I I wonder like how if they had failed like these deception roles trying to get rescue Travis's characters. Would there have been a second combat? Was that a planned combat encounter from Brennan? Like, we had this big combat with a lot of characters. Next episode, we're getting combat with, well, maybe we were getting combat. It's either going to be a role play or a combat situation with Julian, Valus, Taisha. Man, I'm going to keep messing up that name. Taisha, Valus, Julian, and Octus. So I think it's possible that maybe there was a planned combat scenario with each of the character, or like at least the expectation that Brendan was going to try and get a chance to do combat with all these characters. Maybe not, but I think it would have made sense if this was this courtier. I think that's how you say it, clothing store, fancy clothing store, boutique, maybe. Fancy clothing store attendants. Could have been a combat. Could have been just a deception. So yeah, I like that whole scene. It was really funny. I think Wick is riding the line between, okay, dude, you just had your whole world rocked. But you're just still kind of acting like things are mostly normal. That's a little bit dissonant with the narrative, but at the same time, I think it works for now for these early episodes. He is still like a naive noble, and he's still gonna act like he's the scion of his house and all that, even though he is going against them. We will see. I'm hoping for some additional development in that direction, and maybe getting a little bit more serious when it comes to like facing the realities of the world. And it's called the soldier table, so that probably means combat. Can naivete survive the wilds? Who knows? Yeah, I also liked, so later when they regroup with and they kind of are have this huge scene in Hal's house, or all these characters are interacting. I like that, Cadigan's also getting a little bit more moments. Like he's kind of been in the periphery for most of these episodes, but now it seems like he's a little bit. He's like, oh, my character knows about where we're heading. We're going into an area that my character knows about. So I think that's going to open him up for when they're actually sitting at the soldier table, that he's going to have more to say and more to do than he has in these overture episodes. I think it's totally fine to have a character. Let me preface. It's really hard to have a reserved character in D&D sometimes, where there's oftentimes scenes where you want to jump in, but maybe your character wouldn't do that. And I think Robbie Damon's been doing a pretty good job at being more refrained, but at the same, like, you can see that he wants to try and jump in and give an impression of his character, but there's not, he's not as connected directly with the events of these overture episodes, and he's keeping it cool, so respect. And he's keeping it cool while still giving a decent impression of his character with the small scenes he does get. So yeah, I was impressed with Cadigan. He seemed to have a mood shift. That's cool. So we have the group formed. The soldiers are all good. I Azune was another character that, like, surely, like, he is a soldier, but I think, as I kind of predicted last episode, he is set up to be more connected to the city, and so I had predicted that the soldier group were going to be people that were interested in the Nightstone, because it seemed at the time that the Crow Keepers were connected to the Nightstone, and so perhaps the soldier plotline would be chasing that down. Now I see it's kind of diverged. The Nightstone's a different plotline, and these Crow Keepers, Tayor's brother, are going to be a separate plotline that the soldiers are pursuing, and the Nightstone has now dropped back into like an Octus plotline, especially Octus plotline. So we break away. We get Valus following Octus, Tasia following Valus, or following Octus to protect from Valus, and Julian also taking Octus back to it's House Royce, I believe, the fairy house. And I really like the interaction. I like how guarded kind of all these characters are. Julian still a complicated character with his father and all that. Uh, Too bad. I guess we'll never get to see an additional resolution. I don't know. I didn't expect his father to be killed off in this Overture episode, but hey, I guess it happened, and Julian will have to live with the consequences. There was a description that they straight up say that like Julian's character is cursed. So I think a popular kind of fan idea that I would support is that maybe Matt's character is an Echo Knight fighter that like has a shadow haunting him as his echo. That'd be cool. I'm still not sure. He could be one of the custom subclasses and have like a kind of a tragic fighter or something like that. But definitely, I think the curse that's cursing Julian is something to do with his subclass. That's what I'd guess, and not just a character thing. Maybe it's a bit too soon to say. So, yeah, we get this big kind of gathering at the Royce family home with kind of Valus and Anessa, or Anessa, the noblewoman that Julian protects, and Octus, and later entering the scene a bit late, Thasia, Tharja. I keep wanting to say Tharja, but I think there's no R. Jeez, I'm bad at that. Abria's character, showing up late. We get these huge vivid descriptions of connecting like Valus and Thasia's role. Like they're both connected to gods, I guess. I was a little bit confused, I guess. So in the lore of Amon, like Thasia's a druid, but she draws her power from not gods, just nature kind of druid magic. But there was a god previously who controlled nature, and so I guess there was some conflict in where druids drew their power or where nature magic came from. I don't know. I, maybe I'm wrong, but there was some. It sounded like some kind of description from Brendan that was like, "Oh, you need to like reconnect, like both the with the gods, like nature magic, or like reconnect with a god in some way, or do something with that." Some connection needs to be established between the real nature magic, the real old nature magic, and the current, and the sorry, not current, previous god nature magic. And maybe Thasia is related to that, where needs to find that connection, or find something in the world to do that. Same thing with Valus. Valus connected to, I guess, the god of life, very much explicitly kind of trying to maybe like resurrect her. Like there was some description of Valus and Octus that Valus was kind of interested in necromancy, or the idea that you can, revive the dead, and maybe revive a dead god. Who knows? So we get that convergence of the characters who care about the gods more explicitly kind of meeting up. Although Thasia did not have a lot of description before, but I'm making an assumption based on, I think, a description during this whole scene that Thasia might be connected to. There's like imperative that your character feels that you must go here and you must do this thing or else it'll be bad. So you're getting some kind of insight from beyond the veil, and maybe a divine presence or something. Oh, geez. I completely skipped over another scene I really enjoyed. So I'm gonna circle back. We'll get to this finale scene in just a second, but we had a great scene with Murray this episode, or perhaps a mixed scene where Murray was just like dissing this obviously dangerous villain, and I really felt like there was a disconnect. Like, okay, the first time Murray disrespects this Primus guy entering the building, sure, that's part of her character. I think there was an attempt to communicate like this other dean was kind of trying to talk to Murray and go, oh, this guy's a serious deal. Don't go doing that. And then Marisha like kept pushing it. And they kept wanting to disrespect him. And like, yeah, I get it. That's the point of her character. But I felt like there was some kind of miscommunication of tone. Like Brennan tried to rein it in with like, okay, you're disrespecting this guy, he's gonna bestow curse you. Luckily, Murray rolled pretty well and resisted the curse. And I think the point was taken because, well, I don't know. Then Murray was like, okay, I'm gonna detect magic, and Brennan basically had to force her character away by like getting this dean to kind of push Murray away. And I don't think Marisha would have backed down, and perhaps it would have been the earliest character death ever if Marisha was able to continue doing what she was doing and disrespecting this Primus. That would have been really crazy. I think it would have been hilarious actually if we had a player death this early. And Murray seems like a fine character, but who knows? Like I wouldn't have a problem with a character death this early because at the very least they didn't have that many episodes to like establish themselves, so they can easily be like a new character could come in and you're not losing too many plot lines. And I do get the sense that there's nothing wrong with this, but I do get the sense that Murray and Taylor are like the least backstory characters. There was like some YouTube shorts about like who prepared backstory, and I guess Cadigan prepared, or Robbie Damon prepared a lot of backstory, and Travis and Marisha did not, and that's totally fine, especially with such a masterclass DM and group of players. You can find the threads of your own character with just a couple strong details. There's no problem. But that being said, if Murray had been murked by this Primus in episode 3, then it's not like we're losing out on a potential plot line that was set up by this character. All right, that was a cool scene, but these guys mean serious business, and while Murray didn't get murked, Julian's father sure did with this shadow assassin and this group of ghouls showing up in this silence spell. Really cool. And we're gonna have, I guess so we've flown that this Taconis house, got the Shadow Stone, and I guess we're trying to implant it in Octus. Maybe this will give the ability to control the dead. So we had this lore dump of kind of the big magical thing that's happening is the souls of the dead are like a burst appendix, like bursting out of the kind of boundary realm between land of the living and the land of the dead. They're all stuck in this boundary realm, and they're bursting out into the land of the living. And so we knew that this Nightstone was, connected to a celestial being that could shepherd souls. So you'd think that maybe that would be a pathway to clearing up some of these undead. But if Taconis is involved, surely they are interested in keeping things the way they are. They like that there's so many souls, so ready to be commanded or converted into soldiers or whatever by House Taconis. So maybe they want this Nightstone just like to keep other actors away from using it, or maybe there's some other functionality. Either way, they're trying to implant this within Octus, which is interesting. So, like, maybe Octus is somehow related to this celestial from this life god that this Nightstone is connected to. I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I have a feeling it's going to be a combat next episode. I don't think this feels well. Okay, there's two options. It could be a narrative beat, and that's just going to be role played, and Octus is going to get forever changed by this stone, and that's just how it's going to be. Or there's going to be some resistance. I think this it seems like there's going to be a combat with these ghouls and this brother, and probably also involving Julian and Thasia, and Valus. So yeah, I believe that's a setup for next episode. I really like that. This is really setting the wheels in motion with this House Taconis taking over the city. And so, with that all being said, let's try and maybe predict the Seekers and Schemers table. Alright. So, it's still a crapshoot. I'm even less sure than I was an episode ago. I still think you gotta have Belair as a Seeker, or like, I don't even know anymore. So, okay, plotline tracking. We have this Nightstone. I think part of the group is going to be interested in this Nightstone, slash, maybe also interested in connecting with the gods. So I'm going to put like Ashley and Thasia, Taisha, God, Taisha and Valus in the same, because they kind of had this sense of connectedness from this episode of needing to do stuff related to the gods. To that end, maybe Octus is in this group. We get Thasia is connected to him, and he's connected to this Nightstone now. Who knows? Now with Matthew Mercer also being in this combat, that could connect the groups. It could also be, well, I don't know. I think what would make them the most sense would be either Belair or Julian. I'm going to put Julian. I think that makes the most sense. Because then what we end up with is Hal, Azune, Murray, and Belair, who, because they're kind of set up as this home city group, they could be like, oh, their plot line is working within the city to resist these noble houses or sundered houses that are encroaching. Hal definitely seems like he got his adventurer's call. He's now suited up. He's equipped with this liar's blade, and he's ready to fight. But I don't get the feeling like his adventure is being called outside of the city. Azune, especially, explicitly, the reason he didn't go with the soldiers is that he's here to stay and defend the city. So that would make sense. Belair, it's still an unknown. Again, maybe his warlock patron deity is related to this Nightstone kind of seeker vibe, or maybe it's related to he needs to stay in the city and protect something at the archive. Murray, the only thing we have to go on is that she wants to defend her institution. So until new information, I don't see her leaving the city. So we get at least team home, stay in the city team, and then maybe this Valus, God, Taisha, Valus, Taisha, Octus team could be team go fight against House Taconis. And maybe also Julian's there because he's fighting for his house, and his house seems to be a rival to Taconis. So these are kind of the early predictions. Certainly, these four Seeker characters are all being lined up for combat next episode. That doesn't mean they're locked in. In fact, the fact that there's still an Overture episode to go means that these 8 characters are going to interact again. So explicitly, there's going to be more of a mix-up of characters. But that all being said, this is a cool episode, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Thanks for joining me. And again, if you have any suggestions for kind of what to put on the screen, I'm thinking if I'm going to continue doing these episodes, I want to like either have a static image or kind of a repeating image, or have gameplay of some game I'm playing in the background. I don't know. If you have a preference, leave a comment, send me a message, something. Otherwise, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode.